You have to be willing to play the long game. You have to accept that there's probably going to be people out there that aren't as good as what you are, that are earning more money, and have to accept that you're going to win in the long game because you're going to get more exposure and more experience than those guys.
You gotta be curious enough to go and dig into other departments and not live in a little silo and just sit here and write copy.
I'm a fundamental believer that you should give it like 110%. Don't go at it with like, I'm just going to do the bare minimum, and then like the next thing comes up, I'm gonna cut it.
Just outlasting everybody else, I would say, is single-handedly the number one thing that helped me in the first year as a copywriter.
By the time I was making $3,000 to $4,000 a month as a copywriter, I was making double the amount of money that I made as an engineer, and that only took like a year or two. So,
all right, cool. So we're here today with Lee Thompson, one of the top copywriters I've had the pleasure of working with in the Email Dojo Mastermind.
it's good to be here.
Yeah, nice to see you here. And for everyone that doesn't know Lee already, he's been absolutely crushing it for many years with work as a CMO for Heman Media Group, right? Mm-hmm. And a copy chief at Bad Marketing. And now you currently run your own fractional CMO firm with a business partner. So you've been doing a lot of stuff as a copywriter and as a marketer for like some of the top businesses running ads and media and marketing for, you know, like all the big guys that I know, at least. They've all heard of Bad Marketing. So yeah.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of working with like a lot of people throughout the agency stuff and whatnot. Yeah, so it's been a pretty fun journey so far.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy that you're here and that you've agreed to have this chat. And I'd love to ask you a lot of questions. So let's get started with let's start about talking about like what you did in the agency to like really get in there, because I think a lot of times people get into an agency and then they either get fired really, really quickly because they just don't have what it takes, or they quit, or they leave after a few months, like they've done a little bit of work and then they're trying to go freelance. But like you worked your way up an agency for 3 years.
Yeah, pretty much actually 4. So it was. So just like we were kind of chatting about just briefly before this, it kind of started back with getting an internship at the agency, and I did work my way up from there. And I think for me, you know, when it comes to like surviving at an agency and like being able to work your way up, like you have to be willing to play the long game. You have to accept that there's probably going to be people out there that aren't as good as what you are, that are earning more money, and have to accept that you're going to win in the long game because you're going to get more exposure and more experience than those guys. So like for me, I never cared at all like about being like a personality online or positioning myself as a copywriter online or being online full stop. Like I'm not a big social media person, which is kind of funny because I'm like do all my marketing on social media, but I don't really use it. I didn't care like about any of that. For me, it was just like head down, like in the zone. And the only thing that I cared about was getting better, you know. And I remember it probably came from like, I remember reading some book, you know, there's a lot of books that talk about the principle of inputs and outputs, you know, that you can't really control outputs and you can only control inputs. And the only thing that I determined that would send me far, like doing this stuff, was like, it's got to be really good and I just got to be better than anybody else. So that's all I cared about. I was just like doing the thing day in, day out. And I think with that, when it comes to like agency stuff and surviving in it, it has to be a bit of that. You have to be able to do the delayed gratification. Like you have to play the long game and you just have to be willing to put your head down and just work really freaking hard. And if you do that, you have an opportunity that not a lot of copywriters get, because like you get so much exposure and experience to like test your stuff and actually see it happen all in real time. Because like we know like a lot of guys do stuff and they write copy on it, they don't know how it performs. And you know, that is part of the process of getting better. It's just like being like meticulously exposed to that feedback loop of like seeing stuff just come back to you over and over and over again.
Yeah, I think playing the long game with an agency though can be difficult too, because you know, when you're outside of it, it's not so hard to say like, oh, I want to increase my skills and get experience that a few other people have. But when you're actually in the agency working 12 hours a day and having all kinds of demanding requests from multiple different clients on different accounts all at once, all pushing you to do stuff, it is hard to see the bigger picture. And I didn't work in an agency. I worked for a client that, you know, was operating like a 5-person copywriting team. So they were still they still had a lot of creative that we had to produce in the early days. How did you decide that you needed to be playing the long game? Like why did you decide that was your, like, what is your drive to do that in the first place?
I'm not actually sure where that came from. I think when I first started at Human Media, like the first client that I ever wrote copy for was Clients and Community, which is quite probably crazy to say at the time, because that was when like Clients and Community, I know they're still really, really big and they do really well themselves. This is when they really just like burst onto the scene. And it was like in a weird way, I got this like exposure early on that like I have the opportunity to like compete with all these people that everybody sees online, like all these gurus and stuff, all these guys that are known to be really, really good and have a reputation online. I have the opportunity to compete with them here. And for me, for like whatever reason, maybe it's just the way that I'm built, I just embraced that. And the more and more that they came, and the more like, I just used to love nothing more than like such and such is coming to work here. And I would heard that some copywriter had like some big name copywriter had wrote, and I was just like rubbing my hands. I was just like, I can't wait to get my hands on this. You know what I mean? So I don't know, maybe it's just the way that I'm built from like a competitive side, but like I got that like click earlier on that like this is a really good opportunity to learn like a lot and like really get further and further. And for me, I just embraced it. But I think to some extent it's like you got to be able to play the delayed, for me anyway, it's like playing the delayed gratification game in your business thing too. But like you can put yourself in a place to do that if you play the delayed gratification in your personal life. Like I wasn't worried about making 10 to 15 grand a month so I could go out and buy cars and live in, buy houses and, do like all this other stuff, which a lot of the times drives like the need for short-term gratification in your own professional life, to earn money really, really quickly so that you can get the things that you want in your own personal life. For me, I just wasn't really concerned about that. So like I could put that on the hold because I'm just not like a very materialistic person in the first place. So I didn't have to worry about that. Like by the time I was making 3 to 4 grand a month, I was like, as a copywriter, I was making double the amount of money that I made as an engineer. So like, and that only took like a year or two. So like I was making more money than I ever could have made as an engineer had I been at it for like 40 years. So I hit that like threshold like really, really quickly. And it's not a lot of money, like, as well as I do for like copywriter to earn 3 or 4 grand a month. It's not that difficult. So for me, I had like all my bases covered and I just never really got sucked into the idea of like, I need more money, because I knew like that need and desire for more money just came to buy more and more stuff that I didn't really need. So with being able to put that on hold, I could put everything else on hold, like professionally, and just really focus on like getting good, if that makes sense, so that I could just drive forward. Because that's all I really wanted to do. And, there's an element of like being proud of what you do as well. You know what I mean? Which I was like, that would, to me, like being good, like not just like externally or known to be good, but like internally know that like I am progressing and I am constantly moving forward, not just financially, but like skill wise, which is always just more important to me in those early days. And it still kind of is, you know what I mean? It's always been something that's very important to me. It's always been a big driving force, which I think allowed me with that setup and that frame of mind to like embrace everything they threw at me at the agency in the early days, working the long days, writing 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 ads a day or emails or whatever, just like day in, day out. Like I loved every bit of it. Like, you know what I mean? There's times you get burnt out, but like I done 4 years at an agency. I don't think I would have said, I'm burnt out, I can't cope with this anymore. It was, even when I decided to leave, it was just a conscious decision that like, I'm ready to move on to the next thing. You know what I mean? So I think on my end, it was just a bit of the way I looked at it and the frame that I had on it was just slightly different, which just allowed me to like survive and adapt throughout that and continuously progress. And don't get me wrong, like I don't think not all agencies are the same. Like I had the luxury of working at one that was like really freaking good, like Ashton Shanks was the director of advertising, for traffic and funnels and stuff, like way back in the early days. There was like a lot of like coming off the back of that, like he had a massive reputation, which brought with it a lot of opportunities and just the means for like a lot of progression, within that agency environment. So it wasn't as if you wasn't working on like dead end accounts for businesses that I didn't enjoy. Like I love the info and the high ticket product world. So it was just like a playground to me to get my teeth like sunk into everything and anything that I could find.
I do think that frame of mind where it's like you want to play this to be the best at what you do, also for like your own satisfaction, but also because that was the goal, like from a competitive standpoint. It wasn't about making the most money, it was about being the best at what you do. It's interesting how that can like completely change the way that you work at an agency and like be the difference between burning out and wanting to quit and actually just like powering through and becoming, one of the best copywriters that I've ever worked with, for sure. It's like, I see a lot of copywriters, they'll go straight to 10K and they have the client acquisition skills. They never worked with an agency. They never worked in an environment where they had to keep their client during the hard months. Because during the good months, it's quite easy to do well for clients. You could write very decent, you could write some decent copy. It doesn't have to be fantastic. And they've got the right offer, they've got the right message, the timing is good, everything looks great. And now it's like, you've created, as a copywriter, you've created results. You can attribute, I helped the client make $1 million or whatever. It's like, that was their good season. Then their bad season arrives. You don't do so well. The client doesn't do so well. They think it's the copy, the conversions. And then many of these copywriters, they just bail and then they switch to the next client. And they never really get through that. You know what I mean? They never really get past the point of they just stick with the client until things stop working well, and then they jump to the next opportunity. Do you feel like there's a downside to just prioritizing that in the early days? What kind of things do you think you miss out on in skill development?
I think one of the most important things that you miss out on, like you say, maybe when you bail out, and I think one of the worst things that can happen is copywriters can beat themselves up pretty bad. I've seen it firsthand, even with myself in the early days, and with even just anybody that I've came across with, that I worked with them personally, or where I've just been having conversations with them where they beat themselves up pretty personally over maybe a client's campaign not going so well. I done that in the early days, and I probably haven't done that for the last 2 years, because I understand how great and useful copy can be, but I also understand the limitations. And I understand the limitations because I've seen so many different scenarios. I've seen so many different clients in so many different niches. I see 2 fitness companies selling the exact same thing, 2 high-ticket fitness companies selling the exact same thing. One of them smashes it out of the park and the other one doesn't. You've got the same team working behind both of them. And you begin to see it was it's not just the copy that results in the per result. You know what I mean? So I think that's the downside of it, is you don't really ever get to learn and see the bigger picture, which I think is very, very important to have, because then you can avoid situations in the first place. I have a lot of people that come to work with me. I'm probably one of the worst people to approach for work, because they'll be like, oh, I need new ads. And I'm like, no. I'm like, you're not getting across that easy. I'm like, tell me what's going on. And then by the time I walk them round and round in circles, they've got problems that are 10 times bigger than what they thought. And then they're they feel bad, and now I don't have a job to write copy anymore. But you know what I mean? It's in a weird way, I get to see all these, I get to expose to so many different situations, so many different clients, so many different industries, and so many different verticals, from very, very small to very, very big. And you do, I suppose, overall, that with sticking through it and seeing it through the ups and downs, you get to see where the limitations lie. You get to see that this thing that we do is highly valuable, but at the same time, there is a limitation on it, on how far it can go. So for the most part, it's at the end of the day, you just learn not to beat yourself up when things don't work out all that well. You know what I mean? But the other side is just being able to identify certain opportunities and whether or not they're worthwhile. You know what I mean? It's I get to the point now where there's maybe a client comes across the agency or whatnot, and I just know, this is going to be a disaster. Or I just know that this is going to go really well. You know what I mean? It's because you can just tell by the business owner, the things that they're doing. You know what I mean? It's there's so many indicators and patterns that you see repeated over and over and over again, that you just get an eye for what's going to work and what's not going to work. You know what I mean? So I think that's one of the upsides. And then with seeing all the other different pieces of the puzzle, I think we talked about this before, it's you begin to play with other pieces of the puzzle outside of copy, and you begin to add different tools to your belt, and all of a sudden you get more and more ways to fix problems, because copywriters, for the most part, I always look at every situation that I ever come across in the agency or with clients, it's a problem to be solved in an effort to help make more money in some regard. Most copywriters, just in their eyes, I think the problem to be solved is just the client needs copy. The lack of copy is the problem. You know what I mean? But it's it's not the problem. It's there's a different problem. And being able to figure that out and arm yourself with not just copy, but other ways to potentially fix that. You know what I mean? And I don't really think you get to that point without seeing and understanding all the pieces of that puzzle, to then begin to accumulate more tools that you can use to help fix problems, whether it's a CRO problem, whether it's an AOV problem, whether it's a sales problem, whether it's a setter problem, whether it's a script problem, whether it's the limitations and the economics of the business is the problem. You know what I mean? It's like you begin to see things differently. I remember the more and more I get into it, it's almost like just seeing the Matrix in a weird way. It's like you see things that other people don't see. You see things in a different way that other people don't look at them. And you can just become hyper efficient. You know what I mean? It's like I worked on like funnels before. It was like double the AOV in a funnel, and it like didn't change a single word of copy. You know what I mean? Like there's so many other guys would have went at it and they would have bashed their head against the wall, rewriting video scripts and sales letters and doing all this crazy stuff because like they got one tool here to fix it. I was just like, let's just double the price, double the AOV. Like took 5 minutes to do. You know what I mean? It's like that's just one of the upsides of it. It's just like seeing all those different pieces of it. When you get exposed to it and you sink your teeth into it for longer and longer periods of time, and you don't jump ship when things aren't going all that well.
Yeah, I definitely noticed when I started working with more than one business coach in the business coaching industry, because that's where most of the copy I've written was. Biz op, business coaching to other business owners. The first few clients, it all felt new. But after I'd written for like 5 or 6 of them, the messaging started to feel, a different industry a little bit. Like, the way that one guy would help software founders, another guy would help agency owners, whatever. But the messaging was like, it kind of started becoming the same. And after I'd written for dozens of these guys, I started to notice that like, hey, I wrote this, I remember writing a very, very similar marketing message. I remember writing an email that's like this, and it crushed. It created like $10,000, $20,000 of sales. I wrote the same email today. I didn't get one sale. Yeah, I know it's not the copy. Like you get to the point where you're like, you've written something or like this crushed. This really worked well. I'm writing something very similar. It should work. The copy's fine. Like you get to the point where okay, the copy's fine. I think that's something that you miss out on if you don't really write enough copy for enough businesses. It's like you just don't know. You think, oh, maybe it's the copy. It's like, no, I know that message works. I know that message has been working. So, a client will say like, oh, this message didn't work. Like we need to change the headline. We need to change this part of the email. It's like, I don't think that's it. This is something else, So, yeah, I think that's one thing for sure. But the one thing I always find is difficult, and I'd love to know what your perspective is on this, is like, we do have to take ownership for our work as copywriters, because a lot of people that are listening to this, they're copywriters. Maybe they haven't developed the skills like outside of copywriting to like be a marketing strategist. But when they write copy, where's the balance between like taking extreme ownership for your work and like the conversions and like, and also being able to like point that, hey, like the copy is not, like let's say I write ads, right? I write a few ads and the ads don't really convert. It's like, how do I strike a balance between like, how can I make the ads better? Where can I make the ads better? But at the same time, like, this is clearly an offer thing. Because you can't just fire the client, you also have to like try work through those issues,
I think, in a way, it's like you will always end up having to take more responsibility for it if you can't find the other issues that may have caused the problem. You know what I mean? It's like if you don't know the other factors, if you can't see the other factors to be in a place where you can educate and point them out to somebody else, then you may always be left in a position where like you might just have to accept that they're going to point the finger at you and there's not much you can do about it, which is why, yes, you can take extreme ownership for the copy itself, or you could just take extreme ownership over learning all these other different things and diving into them and understanding them even more, which will put you in a place where you don't have to be a punch bag for clients, because like copywriters are always the first person that they love to go to and shit all over if like things aren't working. You know what I mean? It's like they're like, I don't know what it is, that makes that happen, but like they're always the first. So it's like you can be in a position where you always have to take ownership over everything, or you can dive into other things and learn other things and potentially learn a bit about media buying, learn a bit about CRO, learn a bit about funnel optimization. You can learn a bit about all these things. And then when a client comes in and says your email didn't work or this didn't work, it's like, yeah, well, maybe it was this and maybe it was that, you know what I mean? But you have to know it almost like well enough that it doesn't sound like you're deflecting. And you have to be able to just educate and explain the reasons why. You get like, if you just go to them and be like, oh, the offer's trash, they're like, no, not, you know what I mean? They're not going to accept that. It's just going to come across like...
No, they're not going to accept that
No, it's just going to come across like you're deflecting. So it's like, you're going to have to know enough to not just be able to regurgitate things that other people say on the internet, like, oh, the offer is the most important thing and your offer's trash, so that's why it didn't work. It's like, you have to be able to explain that to them in a way that's not going to be condescending or sound like you're lecturing them. And a lot of the time that maybe comes from the dynamic between copywriters and business owners, where it's like business owners here, copywriters down here. And I think a lot of the times that comes from, that's the way they see the relationship. Whereas like I've always seen the relationship on the other end of the spectrum, which always like puts me more in a comfortable place to be like, no, hold on a wee second. Like, we're not going to go down that path. You're not going to blame me for this. We're like, this is the way I see it. If you disagree, that's fine. Like, but I'm not operating under a place where like I wrote a bad email or I wrote some bad ads. Like, there's so many different things that could have happened here. And the fact that you've came to this conclusion in 30 seconds that the copy was the problem shows me that, like, for lack of better terms, like, you probably haven't dug into it deep enough. I have, and here's what I see. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think unfortunately in a way it does take you to be in a place where you can know enough to speak comfortably on some of these other topics. You know, the one thing, you know, as it needs and seeing, I think a couple of people said, it's like when there was an issue that people didn't really know how to fix, like I was just like a dog with a bone. Like I would sit at it and I would go through everything and anything until I found, like, I'm digging into the depths of the CRM. I'm digging into the depths of the ads manager. I'm looking back through the data. I'm going into ClickFunnels. I'm checking the page history on ClickFunnels to make sure nobody didn't change them. I'm making sure that the server side tracking is still working and the pixels are still in. Like, I'm going to like every single corner, like every different thing until I know for sure that like this is the problem. Because that's another thing that you can dive into, which I'm like always a big spokesperson for, is like, you can't solve problems when you don't understand what the problems are. And most people don't spend anywhere near enough time trying to figure out what those problems are. So it's like, for me, it's like I can always be more confident that I am making a more accurate assessment of the situation, whether it be the copy not working, because I'll go everywhere and I'll find everything that I can and I'll bring it all together. And only then will I accept that that is the problem, if the copy was the problem, because sometimes it is, you know what I mean? Sometimes the ad just isn't good. But like, I'll go to all these different sources to try and get a very holistic picture of everything that's happened so that I can be more confident that what we're saying is the problem, is the actual problem. Because like, at the end of the day, the goal of the whole conversation is to fix the problem. You can't fix problems if you don't know what the problems are. And many people are just too quick to make an assessment as to what the problem is. You're just like, oh, it's that, it's the copy. You know what I mean? And it's like, that's the height of the thought that goes into it. And it's like, if that's your analysis of the problem, then like, good luck solving it. You know what I mean? Because these are the same business owners that go from copywriter to copywriter to copywriter to copywriter to copywriter. The copywriter is always the problem. You know what I mean? It's because like their assessment of the problem is just always, and that's, for me, a lot of times that's where that comes from. It's like their assessment of the problem is just the copy shit. And they're like, let's get another one, and let's get another one, let's get another one. And they just continue to go down that route. And it's like, when you look at it, it's all born out of just a really poor assessment of what the issue is. And you can't, like you say, you can't fix problems if you don't know what the problems are. And like, too many businesses and copywriters are just very quick to assume what the problem is. Just dive headfirst in one direction. You know what I mean? And it's like you just go in circles over and over and over again.
Why do you think that they assume it's the copywriter?
This is an interesting thing to probably talk about. Like, as somebody that's like not really been a copywriter that's known online or like have any kind of social media presence, they watch a lot of other people do it. I think a lot of times is copywriters, as you probably know, are like guilty of overcompensating themselves for the results that happened as a byproduct of the thing. And with that comes,
I mean, like the like, I've made $1 million, like $5 billion, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I think they overcompensate themselves. And then with that, you know what I mean? It's like you put yourself up on a pedestal. And when you put yourself up on a pedestal, the expectations of you and what you can deliver and what you can potentially do is a lot higher. And then when you go into these relationships and the person's paid you a lot of money, you know, they write some copy and whatnot, it's like you're the easiest person to point the finger at. Because in a way, maybe you could have just oversold yourself, like slightly just too much as to what you could do and what you were capable of. Again, because you don't really know how your thing fits into the overall picture of the business here. So you overcompensate and take way too much credit for all these things and walk around like you're some sort of like God's gift to business owners. You can just help them make it rain anytime that you want. And then that's the expectation that they put on you, and you charge them accordingly. So I think that's potentially where it comes from. I don't really think potentially with like juniors and like beginner level copywriters who don't really tend to charge a lot of money, but I think that's where the issue comes with like guys that tend to charge like more premium style prices. You know what I mean? Guys that you know to be experts online, guys that are never done talking about all the money that they've made. It's like they put themselves so high up on a pedestal. It's like with that the expectations come. You know, and it was always a nice place for me to be, like to be the person that nobody knew of, to be the person under the radar. There's never any expectation on me, so I could always over deliver anytime. You know what I mean? When you got into those accounts, I think that's where part of it comes from, because like some business owners don't even know themselves. You know what I mean? It's like there's a big difference in the knowledge and understanding that business owners, you know, being the other key piece of the puzzle here in the conversation, to their understanding of the limitations of copy and how much it can actually do. You know what I mean? And then somebody comes along and talks about how they can help them make an extra $2 million a year from their email list. You know what I mean? And that person doesn't really understand the limitations of the business. The business owner doesn't understand the limitations of the copy. The both of them start working together and they butt heads within 2 months because it's not going well. And both of them are just like looking at each other going like, it must be the list, it must be the email. You know what I mean? It's like, it's probably not the problem at all. You know what I mean?
I definitely think that part of the problem as well is like many business owners, they're not marketers. They built a business in some other capacity. They were real estate, they own real estate, or maybe they build an Amazon business. Let's just talk a biz up for example. And they build an Amazon business. They know how to do some advertising perhaps, but they're not aware of how the info space works. And then they come into the space where copy plays a different role and marketing works differently. And there's like just the lack of context, but maybe the confidence from the previous business. It's like, well, I made money in this business, so therefore like I'm good at business. It's like, but you're transitioning now into a new business industry. You're in a new industry. Like you need to embrace the fact that you're a beginner again. Like you don't know what you don't know in this industry. I've seen that at least, you know.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm saying it's like the lack of understanding for the business owner comes from. You know what I mean? Them not knowing enough. The best clients I've ever come across, like, and throughout my time at the agency and coaching on Human X, like they could amass to close to like 300 different accounts, you know, getting to work on in like some capacity. You know what I mean? The best guys that I ever done work for were the guys that could do it themselves. Best business, you know,
the guys that have the marketing skills.
Yeah, they're the best because like they let you do your thing. They don't question it. They understand that like not all ads are going to win. Not all emails are going to book 50 calls. You know, they understand. So like you get more freedom, and with more freedom comes less pressure, and with less pressure comes more creativity, and you're allowed to push the boundaries more, which normally results in better work. But like on the opposite end of the spectrum is the guys that come in and just expect the world. You know what I mean? It's like they're always the most difficult, you know, to kind of deal with. You know, some of the, like nearly every single one, there was always patterns with them, and they always, like, I always say like the best clients, you know, that I ever seen at that agency for like media buying in particular were the guys that were pretty much good enough to do it themselves. The guys that like they could have took over the account and ran it, whether it was spending 5K a day or 15K a day, they almost could have done it themselves. Like they were like normally the people that pay the most that require the least amount of work. So yeah,
it tends to be that way. Yeah,
I definitely agree with you on the lack of understanding from the business owners part. You know what I mean? And then the business owners in general are just like guilty at times of just wanting to project the blame onto everybody else and not take responsibility for their own business. And I think that's where it comes from. Like it's just easier to blame everybody but yourself. You know what I mean? And that's like I think it's pretty universal for everybody. You know, it's easy to point the finger at somebody else and to point the finger at yourself and take responsibility for the fact that it's your business. It's your fault you don't know marketing. You know, it's on you to learn it. It's on you to understand the limitations of the copyright. You know what I mean? It's like for me, I always like that's your responsibility. It's your business at the end of the day. The buck stops with you. You're the one that has to toe the line. You know what I mean? So you can't blame the agency, you know, unless it's like fundamental wrongdoing. You can't really blame the agency for the lack of results. You can't really blame all these other things. You know what I mean? It's like that's on you, in my opinion. And I think that's, you know, tying back to the previous point of like learning all these other things, it's like the way I always seen it was everybody was ready to hold me responsible for the things that I know. So got to a point where I was like, well, I'm going to put myself in a position where I'll hold everybody else responsible for their end of the bargain. Because like I said, like copywriters are always the first person you go at when things don't work. So it's like, And I even seen it too, like working with like probably work with like 40 or 50 different media buyers at this point. You know what I mean? They love to blame the copywriters, so they do. I've had the pleasure of working with some great media buyers, some that are really, really good friends of mine. So the guys I work with, you know what I mean? They'll blame everybody and anybody but themselves. And it's like, that's why I wanted to like learn a bit more about media buying, you know, learn a bit more about the funnels and stuff. So like if I write copy and media buyer comes and says it doesn't work, and go like, okay, like I'm going to check the ad account. We're going to have a look, and we're going to see exactly what you've done with it and how you tested it and which way it was tested and what audience you know what I mean. We're going to have a look because you're holding me responsible, so I'm going to hold you responsible for your end of the bargain. Same thing with the business owner, and they kind of like, oh, the copy doesn't work. It's the reason the thing isn't performing. I'm like, okay, I'm like, send me all the stats for your VSL. Let me have a look at ClickFunnels. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to have a look at all that, and I go like, look, I'm holding up my end of the bargain. But your shitty funnel here with the 5% conversion rate and the engagement in your VSL is like 12%. It's like, it's not cutting it, bro. You know what I mean? So like for me, it was always a case of like, I knew that everybody else around me was going to hold me responsible and my work responsible. Because the unfortunate thing about copywriters or being a copywriter in some regard is your work is at the forefront for everybody to see. Not the same for a media buyer.
Yeah, it's hidden. It's like a black box. It's like what's going on over there.
It's behind the curtain. It's like you don't know what they're doing. You know what I mean? So it's like I remember embracing that very heavily, and it was one of the main reasons I started to dive into like a lot of other different things. And just like I just love learning. I love diving into more stuff. But like I remember thinking that at one point a few years ago, and I embraced that. And it's like, everybody's ready to hold me responsible. It's about time I put myself in a place where I can hold other people responsible for the work that they're doing, because like everybody has to work together. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm going to point out that your sales team is shit if you're going to point out that my copy is the reason that you're somehow not making sales. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to point out, I'm going to be like, your close rate's 10%. Like, nobody shows up for your calls. I listened to a couple of the calls your setters took. It's no wonder people are hanging up the phone. You know what I mean? I'm like diving into all these different things.
Yeah, it's powerful. It's extremely powerful frame.
Yeah. Because like that's the like I said, the unfortunate thing in a weird way about being a copywriter is like your work is there for everybody to see. It's not the same.
And it's so subjective too,
yeah.
right?
Oh, 100%. Oh yeah, like
because everybody could just look at it and they can be like, oh, you know, like you're.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I don't like the way that the voice sounds here. Like this doesn't sound right. It's like that doesn't have any effect on the conversions, you know.
Like, but everybody has something to say until you ask them to do it themselves. You know what I mean? Like everybody, the business owner wants to criticize your work, but the business owner can't do any better. The media buyer says that your copy doesn't sound right, but the media buyer can't do any better. You know what I mean? I'm like, you can't offer any kind of helpful insight, then you should probably just shut up. You know what I mean? I'll let me put this thing out and we'll see whether it works.
I had a client once that wasn't very happy with a couple of my emails, and with good reason. Like the funnel wasn't doing as well as we were hoping for, you know. And so he suggested that he write some of the emails because he was quite eager to get this funnel converting. So he wrote the emails, and they were 3 times lower in terms of the numbers that they pulled in. He was quite convinced that the way he was going to do it was going to do much better, you know. And I think his emails were pretty good. I just didn't feel like they made sense for this particular funnel. But it was interesting because the second that conversation ended and he saw that data, it was like he didn't really give me any he didn't give me any trouble for email copy for a very long time, because he's like, all right, you got the email copy it's got to be the funnel. And I was already saying it's got to be the funnel, you know, but I think that the perspective that you've just brought is like, you got to be curious enough to go and dig into other departments and not live in a little silo and just sit here and write copy. You know, you can't just sit here and write a couple of words and then also charge premium and then also not take accountability for the copy. Like, if you're going to live in a silo, expect to take responsibility for everything, because that's kind of, you set yourself up for that, you know. I like that. I think that's a really, I think it's a really good way to approach copy like today, because a lot of copy today, I wouldn't even say is conversion copywriting. I would say a lot of it is just like, it's like ghostwriting almost, you know, like especially with the personal brand space, it's like you're representing their voice, you're representing something that has already been crafted. Copywriters in the past, they're like the marketer. They like design the offer, they design the strategy. There's like so much more to it than just the writing aspect of it. And I think a lot of modern copywriters, I don't know, maybe it's the BizOp spin on copywriting that today, like you can write a couple emails and make thousands of dollars without any other skill set. It's like, maybe that's the appeal, but there's actually a lot more to this than that, you know? And one thing on this is, one thing I've been suggesting to copywriters is that they don't put on their CV or like when they approach clients, they don't say like how much results they've generated everybody. Like you can talk about it, but spend a lot more time talking about the kind of people that you've worked with and their results, because you kind of get to borrow their credibility that way without promising the moon. You're like, hey, I worked with so-and-so. These are the results that they generated. You know, like I worked with an agency, you could say, that generates or like works with clients that's making tens of millions of dollars or spending tens of millions on ads. I think that's much more impressive than, or it like gives you a better frame than, oh, you know, like I've made clients billions. You know?
Yeah. I think the other thing to go alongside that too, which is one thing like from like doing a lot of coaching stuff, which I think there's like two things, and like one that like kind of helping you framing you as the expert, but just also make sure that you're doing the right thing and you're offering the right solution, is just simply ask more questions than you answer. Like too many copywriters are too keen to talk about all these things that they've done. You know, the client's like, oh yeah, I think I need some emails. And like, I'm your guy. I made this guy $50 million. Here's what we're going to do. You know what I mean? And it's like, whoa, like pump the brakes, fella. You know what I mean? Let's dive into that. Let's unpack that a wee bit more. Why do you need emails? What's going on? Like, what else are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, I'm always somebody that will ask a lot more questions, because like, it probably ties back into the thing before as well. It's like if somebody comes to me and asks me for ad copy, I know that they're going to assess my ability based on the ad copy that they're about to get. So I'm going to make sure that ad copy is what they need. Because if it's not what they need and I give it to them and it doesn't make a bit of difference, well, they're not coming back. But if we have an open conversation about like, okay, so what's been going on? Like what's been going on in the ad account? You think you need ad copy? Okay, like let's have a look, let's pull it up. You know what I mean? Put you in that position of the expert, put you in a position to make sure that like whatever you're about to engage in with this client is going to be mutually beneficial for you both, because your reputation in some regard is always going to be on the line when you engage in any kind of agreement with a client. Because, you know, like some guys are like 100% the work rate. Some guys are malicious. You know what I mean? I want refunds. I'm going to go to nothing held back, post all over Facebook about your work. You know what I mean? It's like some guys are malicious. So like, if you go into like a lot of these conversations of like asking more questions than you answer, and I like you said too, like not over promising, but like asking more questions than you answer puts you in a really good place to, one, sound like the expert, that you actually know what you're talking about, and two, to make sure that whatever you've got to offer this person, by the end of that conversation of asking a lot more questions, you're going to know whether that thing that you have is the thing that's best for them. And I think you should always get to a point to try and determine that, because again, it's like you give them that thing that they asked for and it doesn't work, and you don't understand what went wrong, then they're holding you accountable for your performance as an email list manager, for the autoresponder sequence that you wrote that's not picking any calls. Like they're going to hold you accountable. But I just think the simple case of like always asking plenty of questions, like in these things, like it can goes a long way in like really making you look like the expert and just really diagnosing like what exactly that client needs.
Yeah. I think it's difficult if you need the money. I think that's what it comes back down to. You know, it's like, if they need emails, I better close them because I need the money, you know. And I think a lot of copywriters are in that sort of trap, or you know.
And that's like a bigger thing. It's like where you do need that money, and it probably happens to everybody, you know what I mean? But like times like that, I think you got to be asking yourself, like, why do I need that money? Because like you got to take accountability for the fact that you put yourself in a position to need that money. You know what I mean? Before I jumped into copywriting, I sold my car. I got rid of everything that I could possibly get rid of. I sold everything that I did not need. I cut all my living expenses down to a bare minimum. I like $5 or $6 grand, saved that. And I was like, I got like 6 months to live here on this money and I'm going to make it work. It's like, I put myself in a position to need money, but not need it to the point where I'm like willing to do anything for it. You know what I mean? It's like, I had this conversation with somebody the other week where I think I was reading it in a book, and it's something everybody will have heard, and somebody's probably said it to them at one point, or they've heard from them. It's like, you can solve a lot of your problems in life by just living beneath your means. You know what I mean? It's like, try to like not be that person that gets like, when you get that first big payday from your client, to go out and buy the car on finance. You know what I mean? To go and get yourself a Rolex or something like that. It's like, because you just, at some point, like you're going to put yourself in that position where you need to take on work. And then when you need to take on work, you say yes to things that you probably shouldn't say yes to. And then you're getting battered about it by clients. They're being difficult. You're stressed out to the max. You've got like all these low paying clients, you know what I mean? Because you needed the money every single time. You know what I mean? I think that's like a bigger life thing to kind of talk about. But like, it's always something I've tried to be very cognizant of, and, you know, probably another reason why I was able to go 4 years working in an agency, because I was never all that eager to go out and gradually increase my living expenses. And, you know, I always use the time and the place for that. It's not when I'm 23 or 24, you know what I mean? It can be when I'm 34, 45, you know what I mean? But I always, and I know things are different for everybody, and everybody's got their own unique situation, but like, I have seen a lot of situations where people have done just that exact thing, and it's like, I will point it out, and it's like, you got to be more cognizant, like, of what you're doing, you know, like how you're making your own decisions in your own personal life. It's like, how did you end up in this position? You know what I mean? And like, at least learn something from that, so you don't end up in that, because a lot of guys go through that same cycle of like getting, I don't know, $1,500 or $200 or $2,000 from a client, you know, and then just going out and blowing it, and then 30 days later being in the exact same position where they've got hardly any money left, they've got bills to pay, and you're going to be in that same position next month. You know what I mean? Delayed gratification and living beneath your means, you know, can go a long way. And like, I think making sure you have a very smooth journey in this world, because like, everybody's just so eager to be the guy online, you know, the influencer style, the copywriter, you know, living it up in Dubai or whatever it is. And it's like, there's a time and a place for that. It's not when you make your first 5K, you know what I mean? When you make 20 or 30 grand a month, you can do those things. But you know what I mean? I think there's like a bigger thing within that, you know, probably more personal to me. But, you know, I do think, if nothing else, like a warning sign for some guys that are about to be on that journey to make a decent bit of money over the next 3 to 6 months, like, don't get ahead of yourself. Like, don't blow it, you know, because, you know, like, I haven't really worked on my own for all that long, but you have, and you probably know, like, it comes in waves, and then it can be quiet, you know what I mean? It's like, you have 2 to 3 months like really big, and then maybe it dips down. It's like, you got to be prepared for that.
I resonate with that a lot. There's a lot of copywriters I've worked with that have succeeded, and you compare. I mean, actually recently had an interview with somebody, and he had 6 months runway, cash savings. That's when he got in. Another copywriter I worked with that makes 16 grand a month now. You ask him, he was living with his parents when he started. He barely had any expenses. You know, it tends to be when you're not in a place of need and desperation to get started, when you actually can say no and walk away, that's when the best clients come to you. Because you have the, like, you know, the sales cycle for a good client, like from a copywriting, like client acquisition side of things, right? A client might take 3 to 6 months to close, like the best. They might be busy, they have different projects. You have the sales call, maybe like you said, you know, you diagnose that there's actually a different issue that they have to work on first, and maybe it's not actually something that you want to help them with. Now, I had a client like that where it's like, they didn't need daily emails yet. I didn't want to quote them for daily emails because I didn't feel like their funnel was up and running to the point where they even had a list growing. It was like, let's just set up some basic stuff, and you get the funnel going, you get the traffic rolling, and when that funnel starts converting, then let's start running some serious email marketing, you know? And so for 6 months, they didn't pay me because I wasn't charging them. Like, I didn't work with them for 6 months. And during those 6 months, that's a $5,000 a month deal I didn't have, you know? But like, I always think back to that, and I think like, what if I needed the money back then? And I'd said, yes, let's do daily emails. I could have pushed them, and we would have had 2 months, 3 months without results. And now I'm stressed out of my mind. Now I'm trying to get creative. Meanwhile, I set it up based on what they needed because I didn't need the money. 6 months later, they came to me, and they pitched me 2 times more than I actually wanted to quote them. They were like, let's do this. We don't want 3 emails a week, because that's what I still said. I said, like, I don't even know if we're ready for daily emails. They're like, no, you know what? We want an email every single day. Let's pay double that. Is that okay? I'm like, yeah, it's fine with me, you know? And it was like perfect timing, you know? So it is that thing of like being able to have the money saved. I think so as well.
And I think that point in and of itself just highlights how far just being honest and valuable can go. You know what I mean? It's like, it always comes back at some point. You know what I mean? I think if you put enough of that out there, enough honesty, enough value out there, like, it comes back in buckets and spades. It's like when they wanted somebody to do those emails, didn't go to anybody. You weren't competing with anybody else. You weren't having, you know, we're talking to this guy, we're talking to that guy. It's like straight to this guy, because this guy was honest and upfront and told us that, like, now is not the right time, and saved us, you know, $20,000 or $30,000 over the next couple of months when we potentially didn't need it. You know what I mean? I think that's an interesting point in and of itself, and just being a decent person, providing a lot of value, you know what I mean, and doing the right thing and not saying yes to the thing too soon, you know, alongside the point of like, yeah, try not to put yourself in a position of like not needing, you know, of like needing to take on work. You know what I mean? It's like I started taking on clients, you know, for the first time earlier on the year when I joined the dojo with you in a couple of months. So like in like 2 to 3 months, you know what I mean? I had opportunities hanging out in my ears. I think within 2 months, I'd almost got to the point where I was almost like starting to stress out because I took on too much. But the reality is, if like having a decent bit of money saved up, I could pay somebody else to help me with it. And then the other side of it, like 3 of them, I was just like, this isn't worth my while. And I ended the relationship with those guys after a couple of months. And I explained to them, I was like, look, I don't really think this is working out for either of us. But you know what I mean? I couldn't have been in a position to do that if I didn't have the money saved up, if I didn't have other income coming in. You know what I mean? It puts you in yourself in a place where you don't have to take on things that you don't want to do, that is going to stress you out and is going to make you miserable. Because you hear so many guys like having bad experiences as copywriters. And I think a lot of this is where it comes from. You know what I mean? Saying yes to things that they need because they're in a place where they need them. They have bad experiences. And then they paint copywriting as the worst thing ever, as a profession, as a means to earn, you know, like all these guys out there saying they earn all this money and I can't even earn $1,000 and whatnot. But you know what I mean? It's like, there's differences there. You know what I mean? It's like putting yourself in a place where you don't need that, I think can a much more enjoyable experience as a copywriter, but just a less stressful life. You know what I mean? I think there's bigger conversations to be had if you're constantly in a place where you always need to take on everything that comes your way. You know what I mean? And then the eyes of the client too, you know what I mean? I don't think it makes you look as valuable as what you potentially are. You know what I mean? Whereas like they're going to be able to dictate the price to you. If you need them, then they dictate the price to you. If they need you, then you can dictate the price to them. You know what I mean? I think that's an important dynamic there as well. Like,
it's a very sobering conversation actually for many people that think that they're just going to jump into the space and just, you know, within a few months be a 10K, 15K life. It's going to be great. They're going to have this like party. It's like, it's the wrong frame. It's the wrong frame to be in this for. It's like, it's not a space. I often tell people that it's like copywriting is not a get rich quick. It's not. The kind of skills that you need in this space are, you know, extremely, they're not, you can't just go on a course, you know, you got to like live it and you got to like be in the trenches, as the expression goes. You know, you really actually have to just do the work.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like, I think that's another thing too, where I often think about, you know, on that conversation, it's like, if you are going to get into it and you are going to do it, like, you're going to have to go into it with a frame of mind. I think that like, you're going to do this for the next 4 to 5 years minimum. You know what I mean? It's like, make that conscious decision there and then when you get into it, like, are you willing to do this for 4 or 5 years? 5 years minimum. You know what I mean? It's like, if you're not, like, you're probably getting into it for the wrong reasons. You know what I mean? It's like, because I think about that with like nearly every big decision that I would make in my own life. It's like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Or even if it's a smaller decision, you know what I mean? Of like, I don't know, say I'm like going to start an email list or whatever. I'm like, well, like, am I actually going to take the time to write emails every single day and carve that time out for the next 12 months? I'm like, I don't really want to do that. Like, I want to do it now. Like, this is fun this week, but I don't want to do this. I know for a fact I'm going to get fed up with this. It's the same principle. It's like, because I'm probably one person that like in those 4 years, like has not done 4 or 5, coming up on 5 years now, has not done anything else. Just copywriting at an agency. Because like I always embrace that with everything that kind of came my way. It's like, even with like clients, like, oh, I like need some emails. Like, I don't really know whether it's worthwhile. Like, I don't know whether I can, if I want to do this for the next 6 to 12 months. It's like, I embrace that like long-term thinking to think it through, to avoid wasting my time and my energy and all this other stuff. But more importantly, on that like realm of copywriting, it's like, be okay with knowing that there's no end in sight, and it's going to happen for some people quicker than you. But you just simply stick at it longer than the next guy. It's going to be you eventually. You know what I mean? But like embracing that mindset of like, you're in it for the long run. And you're not just in it for the next 6 months to make 10 grand a month. You know what I mean? It's like, 'cause you can get there, you may get there, but you're going to have to hold it together for the next while. Because it's like, you're building this, your own castle, which like, I hope you enjoy doing it. You know what I mean? And you want to stick at it doing it. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think just embracing that, like, when I got into it, like, that's what it was for me. It's like, if I can make enough money to survive and live like a normal lifestyle, I'm good. And I'll just keep going at this and keep going at this and see how far it can go. I never had any expectations to make 10 grand a month or what. And I always thought that would be nice. You know what I mean? And bear in mind, I had to be somebody that sits on the sidelines and watches everybody else do that. You know, people that started after me, making more money than me and whatnot. But I think there's an element of like being okay with that and just not getting so caught up in what like everybody else is doing. Like you do want to push yourself and you do want to progress, but like it's cliche and silly as it sounds, it's just you against you really. As long as you're kind of getting better and making progress, you know.
I think you beat some of them actually that way as well. Even though people make money temporarily, that's a bit more than you. I think part of the, if we're just talking about the skill, like of copywriting, you know, there's a lot of people. I mean, I spent 4 years really focused on copywriting much more than being a coach and running a business. It was just copywriting, copywriting, copywriting. And I know many people that did copy for, let's say, 6 to 12 months, and then they started coaching. And I feel like there's, you know, once your income goes up to multiple 6 figures and you have a team, you kind of might lose that opportunity to really go into the details again because you have people in your team. So like when these guys get really, really big, they kind of miss that opportunity to learn because now it's like, well, it's too boring or it's too small of a task to solve. It's a $2,000 problem, not a $20,000 problem. Let me pay somebody else to solve it. Now they never really get to like do it themselves, you know? And I think there's a disadvantage because, you know, you might take a year or two longer if you're playing the long game. If you have like a, let's say $1 million per year business goal long term, you know, maybe in the short run you're making a little bit less, but the skills that you have, you internalize to the point that when you do actually grow, like we were talking about earlier, like the best businesses that we've worked with are the guys that could do it themselves. How many years were they in the game doing it themselves before they actually, you know, some of the biggest guys in our space, we know that they were in the game for like 15 years by themselves doing stuff before they blew up or whatever it is, you know? So there's that. And then I like the other thing that you said about making decisions from a place of like how, you know, like zooming out in terms of your time frame. Like, would you make this decision if you had to stick to it for the next 12 to 24 to 36 months? I think you would reduce most decisions. You know, you can get rid of 99% of the stuff that you think you should be doing by doing that. It's like, could I see myself creating an email? Like I had this, I was thinking of starting an email list a while back. And I was like, yeah, I could do that. I love email. I am an email copywriter. Maybe I should write for myself. But I like zoomed out, like, can I really see myself doing this every single day for the next 3 to 4 years within the context of where I was back then? Didn't make sense yet. That was like 2 years ago. And like, I think now, like, it didn't make sense for the long run. But because I was able to see it like, hey, I don't actually see how this helps me, you know, to do this for the next 24 months, like I was able to avoid something that some people might spend all day on. It's like you make a decision and then you commit to it, and then you make another decision, you commit to it. Like so many business owners, they got like 20 things that they're doing. Like, why are you doing that? It's like, oh, I decided to do that. It's like, yeah, but like, how's that helping with the main thing that you need? I don't know, just like decided I should be doing that. You know, like they'll start a new social media channel. Like it's got zero, it's not affecting like revenue at all. It's like, oh, we should be on TikTok. It's like, yeah, but TikTok is not, your business is coming from advertising. It's like, you don't need TikTok. Oh no, but we should diversify. It's like, maybe, but.
Just like an element of like, just think about the things that you're committing to. I think you can reduce so much waste in your own life, just time and money and whatnot, you know. This is another thing is that guys get a bit of money and all of a sudden they want to start something else and they want to, you know, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And it's like, I always just embrace that exact mindset that you were talking about there with the email steps. It's like, sounds good now, but like, I don't want to be doing this for the next 12 months. You know what I mean? And then the flip side, when it comes to getting into copy, like accepting that you're going to be in it for the long run. It's funny you were talking about like some people that have been in it for like such a long time. I've been practicing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you know, for the last couple of years on and off, alongside going to the gym and stuff. But I remember reading a quote when it came to black belts in Jiu-Jitsu, and somebody said it's not about who's the best, it's just about who's left. You know what I mean? It was just, you know what I mean? I was just like, it was like so true. And it's like, and it goes back to, you know, black belt's just a, you know, a white belt that kept showing up, you know what I mean? But it is true. It's just like, if you just got the stamina for it, like if you got the endurance and the stamina for it, you can stick at it slightly longer than the next guy. Like your time will come, like it will come. Because like so many guys are like, I think every single day, like, you know, more and more people get into it, but more and more people drop out of it. It's like talking about copy as a profession. It's like eventually, if you can just keep going at it and just chipping away and sticking at it longer than the next guy, it's like whatever it is that you're looking to gain out of it will come eventually. if you're putting in the work every single day and you're not fooling yourself by telling yourself that you're putting in the work and you're really just faffing around all day. But you know what I mean? I think there's a lot to be taken from that when it comes to copy, with just life in general, with anything that you embrace in anything that you do. Like everybody that is good at something or is notorious and known for doing something really, really well, been doing it for such a long time, like such a long time. You know what I mean? It goes on forever and forever for them. You know what I mean? And I suppose maybe at some point they embraced that same mindset. It was like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it for as long as I possibly can, you know? And I think it comes with that. But I always remember that stuck out to me, you know, and it came to like just any skill development. You know, at the start it was jiu-jitsu and I was thinking about it, and then it was like copying. I was like, it just really applies to everything. Like anything that you want to start, anything that you want to get, you know, to stick your teeth into, you know what I mean? Not about who's the best, it's just about who's left.
Yeah, I mean, even the best copywriters, they progress into other things. I mean, look at what you're doing now. You know, a lot of the things that you're serving clients in a different capacity than many copywriters that want to get into the industry today. So, like, even the best of the best copywriters, you're not really, I would say, competing with them, because they progress, they become marketing directors, they run offers of their own, they get a position in a different company, they do something else. And so you're not competing with the best writers, because after a while the best writers progress. You're not competing with the people at the same level as you, because a majority of them like lose hope and kind of fizzle out and disappear. The other ones have like too short of a time frame for when they want to get rich, so they get disillusioned and they leave. You know, all the ones that did well for a little while, they like blow all their money, and then they get into the situation that we talked about where they have like nightmare clients and they're in a difficult situation. So like literally just outlasting everybody else, I would say, is single-handedly the number one thing that helped me in the first year as a copywriter. Is like I just literally outlasted everybody else on the team. They all left. And because we're working with startups, well, I was working with a startup, it's not like they filled the positions very quickly. They just gave me the most senior position because there was no one else to take it. Because they were like, can you do this? And I was like, I will learn to, you know, basically. And it's like, I jumped into the position, I figured it out. And the next thing, within a year of being in the industry, now I'm a senior copywriter, like doing a senior role. Like what other industries like that? I mean, probably a few that I'm not really in, but being able to just jump ahead like that, just by simply outlasting everybody else, gave me all these skills that I would say, you know, like I'm really grateful for. Like it really accelerated my career as a copywriter for sure.
Yeah, there's the same even with me and becoming like copy chief and stuff, like especially at Human Media. You know, I maybe seen 10 to 12 copywriters maybe pass through, you know, over the course of before I became copy chief. You know, there was only other one person that was there as long as me, you know. And even then, he didn't really want the copy chief position. I wanted it, so I got it. You know what I mean? It's like, really out of 10 to 12 people, it's like, I really only competed with one, and the one that I was competing with didn't even want it, so I got it. You know what I mean? So it's like, you didn't have to compete with them all. It's like, because I could outlast all of them. Like, they didn't have the stomach for working in an agency the way that I did. So they head for the door, you know what I mean? For one reason or another. Some of them wanted to move on. You know, some of them was like, they didn't like the stress, they didn't like the workload. Some of them had different opportunities and whatnot, but at the end of the day, there was still a batch of them that kind of came through, but I was just able to last longer than them at it, you know what I mean? And it really only just left one other guy to compete with, and I wasn't really competing with him because, to be honest, I would have been happy for him to have it just as much as me, because we're really good friends and we're still best friends to this day. But that was the only choice, and he didn't want it, so I got it. Like, and that's the reality of it. It's like, you longer, because like, I think the one thing that people often overlook when it comes to like progressing in an agency is like the relationships you build with the people that work there, like, go a long way. You know what I mean? It's like, because everybody knows, like, when you're progressing up through any kind of business environment, you're working for somebody else. Like, the relationships you have with the people above you and the people around you carry a long way when it comes to progressing. You know what I mean? Those people above you don't like you, like, good luck getting promoted. You know what I mean? It's just the reality of it. You could be the best person there, but like, if they don't get on with you or they don't like you, it's going to make it more difficult. You know what I mean? I stayed long enough where I built really, really strong relationships with Ashton, with Isaac, you know, the CEO, the COO, and like all the guys that were there from the very beginning. You know, for me, like at Heman, there was only 2 people that were there longer than I was outside of Ashton. You know what I mean? That's how many people, and I was very proud of that. The amount of people I outlasted in that time, like a revolving door of media buyers at one point, you know, 40 or 50 media buyers coming through the place. Graphic designers, video people, creative directors, you know, they all came and they all went. But like, I was the one that was there at the end of the day, you know what I mean? And that obviously goes a long way, because you build strong relationships and a sense of loyalty with those people, you know what I mean? And that's one thing I would say, if you do decide to work in an agency, it's like, take advantage of that and make a cognizant effort of that to build relationships with the people around you, with the media buyers. I remember it dawned on me one day when it was like getting like, you know, thinking about like what I would do after that and whatnot. I think it was maybe actually with you when I first joined the dojo, and I was like, I don't really have like too many relationships with people. I was like, hold on a second. It's like, I've probably worked with like over 100 people over the last 4 years that I've got to know on like a fairly decent level. And all of a sudden I just had to reach out to like 4 or 5 of them, like, bingo, you know what I mean? Like, clients everywhere, you know what I mean? It's just like, to take advantage of that, like make friends with those media buyers, like get to know them, you know what I mean? And some of the relationships you build with you are some of the best that you have, you know what I mean? I built a relationship with a couple of guys with Israel and Nate, if they're ever watching this, you know what I mean? And it's like, they've become like, I've never even met these guys in person, but I've worked with Nate for like over 4 years now. I've worked with Israel for probably 3 years now, you know what I mean? And it's like, they've become like, I like talk to those guys like still even now, like more than I probably talk to my own friends in my own personal life, you know what I mean? Like those relationships can go very far, and you know, they're doing work and I'm doing work, and you know, do you want to help out with this? Do they want, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, I know a guy that needs this, you know what I mean? It's like those relationships go like so far. Like when it comes to like moving up internally, and when it comes to the fruits of it that kind of can come after and whatnot, you know, I think you go out of way to do things for people, like they'll go out of their way to do things for you.
Yeah, and it translates as well to dollars, you know. I mean, I have a relationship from the very, very beginning of my copywriting career. I would say that person single-handedly has been responsible for probably over $250,000 worth of business for me, just constantly introducing me to people all the time. And I would say he's a really, really close friend of mine, you know. I really care about the guy a lot, but it's just month after month, hey, I got a guy that needs this, or I got a guy that needs that. So I think 2 big things that, you know, we've definitely dug into for copywriters is like, you know, don't operate in a silo from 2 places. Like the first place is in terms of your skill, because like if you're working with an agency or any company, you need to be able to see problems that impact you in the work that you do. And then also don't silo yourself in terms of relationships and connections. I think a lot of copywriters, they want to go for the 10K, they want to go for a lot of money. They just kind of tunnel vision it, just work, deliver as like the bare minimum, go close another client. They don't make efforts to connect with all the people in the team. Like, why would I make a friend with the graphics designer? It's like the mindset. It's like, no, make friends with everybody, because long game, like they're going to be here. Like, where do you think the graphics designer is just going to disappear off the face of the earth when they leave the client? No, they're going to go and work with maybe another business, maybe a better business, since they're also career driven. They're going to go, every single time someone leaves a company, I always have the thinking like, they're going to go work with a business that is better, because they want to increase their income. They want to progress their career. So like every single person you make friends with today, next year they're aiming to be better, work with better clients, make more money. The year after that, same thing. And so like some of the people I started working with 5-6 years ago, it's like today they're making $100,000 a month. Back then they were in debt, like barely making money. So like you don't have to go and like, oh, where are the best hanging out? Like, how do I buy myself into that secret room with all the best? It's like the best of the people that are not the best right now. You got to think, like, zoom out. The best of the people, your colleagues, the people up and coming that they're like going to start taking over later, and like you make friends with them because you genuinely, you know, want to. And there's a lot of things that'll come from just doing that small stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the key things that you touched on just towards the end there as well, is like, make those relationships with no expectation. You know what I mean? I think too many guys, they go out of their way to like network and build relationship because they want something out of it. There's an expectation that they have. And somebody can sense that. I think anyway. You know what I mean? I feel like I sense that. You know what I mean? It's like, go out of the way to do those things, to help people, you know, when you get the opportunities, and you just don't expect anything to come return. It's like you do it enough times, it will come back, you know what I mean? And you'll not repel people off because they get this feeling that you want something from them, you know what I mean? It's like, I've always took a lot of pride in doing that, you know, for people, you know, especially when it came to like coming through Human X and stuff. Like, I was always the person that was like, somebody come into the program, like they needed more help than anyone. I'm like, if you need to sit on a call with me for 2 hours tomorrow to figure this out, it's like, I'll do that. You know what I mean? And it's like, I've done that enough times where it's just like, it all circles back. You know what I mean? Like they come back, you know, a year later, be like, I need some of this, you know, or, you know, I've got this person that needs a landing page or whatnot. Like, is there any chance you can help them out with it? You know what I mean? It's like just constantly going out of your way to like to provide value and build a relationship and do things for people with just no expectation in return. Like it starts to come back and just accumulate, almost like I was reading a lot of Charlie Munger recently, like a Lollapalooza effect, like mini bursts at different times. So, you know what I mean? It just feeds back into you over and over again. So I think that's the key thing when it comes to building those relationships. It's like, do it for the sake of it. You know what I mean? Don't do it with the expectation that something's going to come back, because you don't know where those people are going to go. You don't know what they're going to do. You know what I mean? And if you do the right thing at the right time for them, there's no expectation then. It's like 6 months later, 12 months later, it could come back in wonderful ways like you never even would have imagined or anticipated.
Yeah, there's so many situations that I can think of from like coaching copywriters and from my own experience where just you would never expect that and that to happen. You just can't strategize it. You cannot imagine it, you know, and it just happens. It's like, you know.
Yeah, I actually got somebody reached out to me about 2 months ago to write Facebook ad scripts. And all I got a message was, I knew who the guy was because he was a client of ours. He was a CMO for this client. And I just got a message saying, your colleague referred me over. I didn't get any name. I didn't ask. And still to this day, I don't know who it is. I reached out to 2 people blindly thanking them because that's who I assumed it was. And they're both like, no, that wasn't me. So still, like, I have a job that was delivered by somebody and I still don't know who it was. Like, I literally blindly thanked 2 people that I was sure that it was. I was like, it must have been that guy. I'm like, well, if it wasn't that guy, it has to have been this guy. Both of them are like, nope, wasn't me. Still don't know who it was. You know what I mean? It's just a funny way that it comes back. You know, somebody just was like happy to push somebody my way and still be a total ghost about it and not even expect anything in return, because I'm going to assume whoever it was, we must have had a good experience. If you're watching this, we must have had a good experience at one point. You know what I mean? It's like simple, funny things like that. You know, going out of your way for people with no expectation, like, it does come back in buckets and speed.
It's just so interesting how when you have a long time frame as your perspective, how different the action steps and the behavior is. Like, completely different. It's completely different. No agenda, just genuinely interested in people, looking to solve problems for the business in the long run, not doing work for them that you don't think that they actually need. Like, the play style is completely different. And I think, yeah, like now that you share this with me, it's like, it's very, very clear. A lot of copywriters, they go into an agency as a means to an end, or it's like I'm going to join this thing so that I can make money, so that it's like in 3 months time, maybe they don't say this to the person on the interview, but the goal is like, I'm going to work here because I need the income today for $3K a month. As soon as I get a better client, I'm replacing them. And maybe that makes sense, depending on the agency and depending on the client. But I think the general approach of like, oh, I'm going to use this client until I get the next better paying client, I don't think it's a very useful way to actually progress in terms of skill. I don't know what you think about that play style.
I don't think so. I think whatever you're going to do, whatever client you're going to work with, whatever business you're going to work with, whether it's an agency, whatever it is you're going to do, it's like, I'm a fundamental believer that you should give it like 110%. Like, don't go at it with like, I'm just going to do the bare minimum, and then like the next thing comes up, I'm gonna cut it. It's like, and maybe like that's a personal thing for me in the way that I've been. It's like, when I was younger and I worked in the local petrol station, you know, within like 12 months, I was a supervisor. I was like, I don't care whether I'm working in a local petrol station or a gas station. It's like, you're going to do whatever I do. I'm going to do it well. You know, I moved on to become an engineer. It's like within 4 years, I went from the apprentice to the R&D manager. You know what I mean? It's like, I didn't even really want to be an engineer. Like, in full transparency, I didn't really want to be one. Like, I wanted to like be running my own online business, but I still was like, oh, if I'm doing this, like, I'm going to do it well. You know what I mean? And I think everybody should embrace that when you go into these, take on these businesses, these clients, these roles. It's like, give it 110%. It's like, yeah, if you got to take on additional clients on the side and whatnot, like that's cool, but like, do what you're paid to do and do it really freaking well. Like, and I think that will pay off for you much more over the long run with the reputation that you build, not just for being that person, but and then the relationships that you build with those other people. When you become somebody that is known to do good work, that's reliable, that's trustworthy, there's not going to be the guy that you can't get hold of on Slack when you need him for a meeting or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like, giving it like 110, because that's like all that I ever done for me, and I think it's worked out pretty well for me. It was just like, I didn't even take on any client work or side work or whatnot. And I'm not saying that people have to do that, but like, I just give it 110%. And I do think when I look at the trajectory of it, like, it paid off pretty well. You know what I mean? Like, to go from the intern to the CMO in like 3.5 years. Like it paid off the level of focus and dedication that I give, like that I said yes to pretty much everything, you know what I mean? And it was the only focus point that I had, and every opportunity that was through my way. What do you want to do? Like jump on some Human X coaching calls at the time? I was like, yeah. So I'd never been on a coaching call before in my life. I was like, I'll figure it out. Do you want to do this side project? You know, with me, we got this. I'm like, yeah, of course you do. You know, like everything that came my way, I was like, yes, we'll figure it out later. You know what I mean? So I became, with a simple case of like doing these things with not much expectation, I became known as not just, I think, the person that was like really good at what they do, but the person that you could rely on. The person that you could message probably at any time of the day and know that they're probably going to jump on a call and help you fix your problem. The person that you can probably ask last minute to do this thing and they're probably going to get it done on time. And some people maybe don't want to be that person. I was okay to be that person. And I think that paid off for me like massively over the long run of not just being, like I say, good, but just being reliable. Because that's what like, that's another conversation to probably have about copywriters is like the reliability. You know what I mean? Like being good and being reliable are two entirely different things. You know what I mean? But I think being reliable and just, like I say, just like full focus and doing it like 100%. I believe whatever you do. And that's another reason why you say no to a lot of things. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I kind of want to do that, but I'm not going to do it 100%. You know what I mean? So if I'm not going to do it 100%, you know, and I have that thing, I think it's like a personality thing where like I obsess over anything that I get, you know what I mean? Or anything that I do, like I develop like a bit of an obsession for it. And that's the way that it was for me. And I just give it like 100%. And I think you should do that with everything that you do.
Yeah, people can feel it when you're not giving 100% very, very quickly. The work suffers very, very, especially in our space. I mean, especially with the businesses that have like it's such a volatile industry, you know? Like the offer could be so good one month, a product could be doing so well, selling so well, and then the next month, it's just a mess. And if you're coasting and you've got 3 or 4 clients and you're like kind of good, but not really, and all those clients have a fire all at the same time, your life is just hell. It goes from, oh, things are great, I'm making 10K, I've figured it all out, I'm a genius, I'm gonna become a copy coach, to like the next month, oh, all my clients are nightmare clients, I think I'm gonna fire all of them and become start my own Amazon, you know, like Amazon store or whatever, I don't know, you know. So I've seen that. I think so. It's okay. So it's like the long time frame, but also like giving it 100%. I think these are very, very powerful things for copywriters to keep in mind if they want to work with an agency. But I mean, everything you're telling me really resonates with my experience with my first big client. And they weren't an agency client, they were an in-house role. Very similar. You know, although we didn't have multiple different clients, the amount of copy that we were producing on a day-to-day basis was definitely, you know, probably very, very similar to the amount of copy that, you know, copywriters and agencies produce. I was really, you know, I was working pretty hard. You know, I was working like 15 hours a day, and I know that that's not sustainable for everybody because some copywriters, they like actually get into this industry after they've been in a 9-to-5, or they transition in and they do a little bit of work on the side, and then they like, you know, slowly get their way in, or like they have a family. But at the same time, it's like, well, it doesn't, I mean, this is what business owners need. You know, they need somebody to just be available, be reliable, and like don't overpromise stuff that you can't deliver, because it's just not worth it, is it? You know.
I think there's a lot to be said though too, and like, you know, when we're talking about like working with clients and things potentially aren't going well, it's like I can almost guarantee you that client will not grill you if they feel that you've done your best. Because like a lot of times there's a case of that where it's like the person's going to have a go at you potentially if they feel like you haven't really done your best. But like I can tell you out of seeing, I don't know how many clients come and go at the agency that I worked at. Like we had a really low churn rate. It was something that was pretty good. It was like less than 10%. Like it was really strong. You see the ones that did go, when they went, a lot, the common message would have been was like, we got to end this agreement. So we do, because results just aren't where we want it to be. And we know that there's things we got to fix on your end. We appreciate everything that you've done. We've never worked with an agency that's went above and beyond the way that you did. Like we appreciate every hour that you put in, and hopefully we'll be back at some point. We just got to fix some things on our end. Like that was the common thing, because like everybody on our team operated it the way that I did, like 110%. So even when things don't go well, like the blame's not pointed at you and that person feels like you've done 100%. Like when you went at it and you give it your all and you were available and you tried your best to fix those things and you went above and beyond and over delivered for that client, I don't think you're going to have an issue even if things don't go that well. Maybe sometimes you will, because some guys are just dickheads, but a lot of the time you will avoid that confrontation, because I think like I've personally seen it with like guys that I've worked with like internally, where it's like, yeah, their stuff isn't great, but I'm like, I can hit that guy up and I know he'll have that thing done in the next few hours. Like that's more valuable to me to know that they're going to keep going at it and they're reliable, they're trustworthy, and they will get better over time. Versus other people like, oh, we'll send this message and see if they'll do it. I'm like, fuck, hopefully we'll hear back by tomorrow morning. You know what I mean? It's like where I just feel like they're just like slightly removed from the situation and they're not giving me the best that they've got. You know what I mean? It's like I'm going to be more annoyed at that person for not giving me the best than the person that does their best and goes above and beyond, but even if it doesn't work. It's like, because most of them, it's like, dude, I appreciate everything that you done here. It's like you went above and beyond. Like I know you worked late on this. I asked you for 5 pieces of ad copy, you give me 10. I asked you for 1 opt-in page, you give me 2. You know what I mean? It's like you went above and beyond at like every single instance. I've seen people like firsthand like that. And when that's the case, like it's hard to be annoyed at somebody like that, even if it doesn't work out all that well. You know what I mean? And I think you can take that same thing to clients where it's like, because I think a lot of clients have this feeling that you're just like doing the bare minimum. And it's like, yeah, there's like an element of that, like you do what you paid for and whatnot. But trust me when I say it's like, it will go a long way when you go above and beyond. At like every chance that you can get, you know what I mean? Just to do a wee bit more, to do a wee bit extra, like, and even if things don't work out too well and you don't end up working together long term. And I suppose that would go back to the principle of just giving like 100% of whatever it is that you do, whether it's in an agency, whether it's with those clients, like giving it everything you've got. You know what I mean? Even if it doesn't work out, it's not going to end as sour. You know what I mean? Is what it potentially could. Because you see some of these guys, like the way the relationships end with clients, sometimes it's just not nice. You know what I mean? It's like clients piss you over, they're getting irritated about it, you know, they want refunds, blah, 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 you know what I mean? It's like you get all this stuff, but it's like, I feel like if you go above and beyond for people and do your best, you know what I mean? I think you can avoid a lot of that, like in general, because I've like I said, I've seen it firsthand with like the clients that we worked with. It was always like most of the clients that like always left on good terms, whether the results were there or not, like always left on good terms. And see, every single time that they left, full onboarding handed over to, or offboarding handed over to them, full recaps from the media buyers, all the assets that we hadn't launched, all passed over to them, and then the option to chat with our media buyer for the next 3 weeks while somebody else takes over the account. Like, you know what I mean? It was like above and beyond at like every turn that we got. Like, and it made sure that it was like very, very few sour experiences with people leaving. You know what I mean? At the odd time where maybe just per management, but you know what I mean? I think I learned a lot from that, like in that way of operating, which was like Ashton predominantly. I think I learned a lot from like that way of operating, is like really going above and beyond and really doing everything that you can, whether it's going well, whether it's going bad, whether they're leaving, you know what I mean? Not being pissy and sour about it, but like doing everything you can. And maybe that's even like simple things for copywriters, like you're managing the client's Klaviyo account and they want to bring somebody in-house. It's like, cool, like offer to get on a call with the guy, like offboard it, like give him everything that you've got, like be nice about it. Yeah, it's like, you never know, because like if you ended on a pissy note with them, they're not going to come back. You ended on a good note, this guy internally doesn't work, they maybe hit you up in 3 months again and ask you to come back. You know what I mean? Like,
I've seen that so many times.
Simple things like that. But like so many guys just get, I think, like pissy over it, you know what I mean, on both ends, and then it doesn't end well for anybody. But like offboard, and I've even done that with like personal clients and stuff too, where I'm like handing over half of a ESL script that I was hardly even paid for because I was the one that decided to end the relationship. It's just like, I told you I was going to have this done. I also told you last week that it was going to end, but like I'm still going to do what I said I was going to do, whether I get paid for it or not. You know what I mean? And if you need help in the future, or there's like at some point if you're in a better spot to accommodate the working arrangement that I would like, you know, hit me up, let me know. You know what I mean? So it's like, doing those things, I think it just goes a long way. Like, that was just something I like definitely learned, like working on an agency. They took a lot of pride in not just the results that they got, but the management of their clients in general. You know what I mean? Whether it was on their way in or on their way out.
Yeah, one of the best clients I've ever worked with was, he asked me for a very, very interesting sales page for a different offer that they were testing. And I like was very, very different from the stuff I was familiar with writing. And I couldn't write the sales page, I tell you. Like, it was very hard. I spent 3 days on this thing, pulling my hair out. The amount of cereal I remember eating, because I was eating cereal. I was eating cereal and I was playing like video games to distract myself. But I was up late. I would finish at like 1 a.m. and I knew it was due the next day. And that day I woke up at like 7 a.m. and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna take some sleep and I'm gonna get back to this page. I was obsessed with this page for 3 days. And I sent it to the guy. And his reply was, thank you so much for this work. I think you need to write the emails instead. And I was like, okay, sorry, like, if I'm gonna have to learn how to write this kind of thing, like, I guess I realized at that time. And he was saying, you're better at writing emails. You should just focus on that. And we still have a good relationship, like the guy still really enjoys. That page didn't convert. He ended up paying somebody else like $25,000 to write a different sales page. He just realized like the what we as the team were capable of doing back then was just not what he was looking for, but he tried with the team first, but like you said, right, it's like as long as you put the effort in, he could see that, and like genuinely made an effort with me after that, even though I thought like, oh man, I'm never going to learn how to write a sales page, and that experience actually really worked out for me really well. Like I learned how to write better copy later. And like looking back on the page, like I learned a lot from that experience too. So like you take something away, even if you don't get paid, you get a lesson from it, But the biggest thing, and I think we've talked about this before, the thing that separates copywriters, whether you're working in an agency or whether you're freelance or whether you're working in-house for a client, is the consistency of high quality copy. Much more than like, it's the consistency thing. I mean, that's, for me, I would consistently write, when I was getting started, I wasn't writing 8 out of 10 copy, but I was consistently writing 6 or 7 out of 10 copy every single week, and it was consistently decent enough to go out, and it kept getting better like that all the time. And I know you've mentioned this to me. Maybe for everyone listening, maybe they'll also benefit from hearing this perspective of like, you've worked with a lot of copywriters that are like up and coming copywriters, and I think a lot of the copywriters, they worry that like every single piece of copy has to be like a 9 out of 10. And it's like, it's not the reality, is it?
No, it never is. Especially if you're in an agency environment, and you have the luxury of working with somebody that's above you, like a senior or a chief, you know what I mean? It's like, that's not necessary at all. Like even when we'll go into the 6 out of 10 stuff, it's like even when we're like hiring copywriters, like for the most part, it's like you're looking for culture fit and work ethic more so than you're looking for skill. You know what I mean? Like I think you're going to fit in well with the team. Think you're going to work hard. It's like, cool. It's like, we'll take people at most levels and we can probably mold them in to something because we have the clients to do it. We have the amount of work that's required to make it happen, and the amount of exposure that's required to make it happen. So we always look for that more so than like skill, because like skill a lot of the times brings ego, and with ego just brings bad culture, like a lot of times we've seen that. But yeah, like the 6 and the 7 out of 10 copy, you know what I mean? I do think that's more important to be able to like consistently deliver a higher baseline, just like, or a baseline and above, you know what I mean, all the time. Like consistently is way more important, because I have seen people, like I said, it's like when they were on, like couldn't be beat, you know what I mean? You get 9s and 10s, you know what I mean? But like good luck getting it turned on, you know what I mean? It's like
exactly, yeah,
9 out of 10 a couple of times a month and 4 out of 10 the rest of the month if you got anything from them at all, if it was even on time, you know what I mean? Like I've seen that a lot. And even like one of the best cases, was the guy we brought in probably 2 years or so. I worked with him, like, and when he came in, like he was actually a senior at another YouTube ads agency, but like we brought him in as a junior, and he didn't care about that. Like he just wanted to get in there and he wanted to learn. Like no ego involved. I like the agency he worked at. It was like relatively good, like relatively well known. And we brought him in, and like he just ate everything, and it's like consistent 4s went to consistent 5s to consistent 6s to consistent 7s to consistent 8s to consistent 9s to just took over as the copy chief as I left, you know what I mean, in the span of like 2.5 years, done faster than I did, you know what I mean. And it was, for me, very much similar to like the way that I was just so hungry for it. Like he would have been the kind of guy where it's like, if we needed a sales page and I needed it done right first time around in a reasonable timeline, he would have been like, can I have a go at it? Like, can he do it? But can I do it as well? And I know that mine will probably not get used. Like he wanted to do it anyway. And he was like, if you can just critique it and we can compare them. Like, I'm happy enough to go out of my way and write a 3,000 word sales page. You know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of hunger that he showed for it. And it just like on and on and on, you know what I mean? And he progressed so fast. And I at this point, he's probably one of the highest paid copywriters I know. Like, he earns way more money than I do. Like, he's probably one of the highest paid copywriters I know. He's built some phenomenal relationships with some like OGs in the space and stuff, you know what I mean? Like, and he's done like so well for himself. And it's like, all of it is just coming from like, I don't care whether you pay me or not. Like, if you just give me the opportunity to work with you, like, for him, you know, even, I'm not going to mention names, like, but you would know, like, everybody talks about, he's probably the best copywriter and the one that everybody talks about the most. Like, you know, he managed to build a relationship with that guy through the exact same principle. It's just like, I will write whatever you want on I don't want pay. All I want is you to critique the work. If you can just critique the work, that's it. That's all I want. And he went out of his way and he done that. And now he's built some phenomenal relationships, which is bred onto like other guys. Cause like the one guy in particular I'm talking about, like, if you build a relationship with this guy, it's like, you don't really think you'll ever need work again when it comes to like copywriting stuff, you know. It's like, he's the one that everybody talks about being the best, you know what I mean? So it's like things like that, whereas like all he cared about was same thing. It was like getting better and getting better and getting better and getting better. And then all of a sudden when he was good enough, then he looked for the opportunities and he got the opportunities and he smashed every single opportunity that he got, you know what I mean? And it was just always like, I remember like getting on and like, you know, criticizing his work and like cutting it into bits, like, and he just took it on the chin like a champ, like every single time, like, you know what I mean? Like, sometimes I was ruthless with it, other times I was nicer about it, you know what I mean? But he just was like, still showed up the next day, like, let's do it again, and then the next day and the next day and the next day, and like he did from 4s to 5s to 6s to 7s to 8s to 9s to 10s, like straight away. And like now even at BAD, like, he's probably the most trusted copywriter at BAD, which goes a long way, probably in a sea of could be 20 plus copywriters there at the minute. Like, he is numerally, you know, the guy that is trusted above everybody else, which is a big thing. Like, and I remember 2 years ago being a junior, 2.5 years ago being a junior, you know what I mean? And that's all it was, like, just hunger and appetite, Like, he was hungry for it and he was willing to put in the work. Like, and it just, you know, like I say, like, that attitude has paid off well for me. Like, it has paid off for him even more, because he probably went even above and beyond what I did when it came to like making the effort to build the opportunities and the network and the connections outside of that. You know what I mean? So
yeah. And now he's set up for life. You know, like if he wants to build his own offer, I'm sure he has the skills to do it. If he wants to consult pretty much any business, he has that. Like, this is the cool thing about copywriting is like, yeah, sure, the journey is difficult, but it's a skill set that like no one can really take this away from you. You know, it's all here. You know, it's all here, and it doesn't go away. I haven't found, for me, like, I write less copy today than I used to write back then, but when I have to sit down and write some emails, like, it comes to me pretty quickly. It's like speaking a language, you know, it's like it just like switches back on, you know. So I see the value in that. It's like really pushing yourself and really going to that next level. And I haven't dabbled as much with media buying as you have, but I imagine it's pretty similar, right? Like, the process is just hunger, attitude, curious, really just want to go and figure it out, right? Like, it's not a course, is it? It's more about just wanting to go out there and discover it, right?
Yeah, so like when it comes to like media buying, just like diving into it, like, it's just one of those things that you can only really pick up by like osmosis, you know what I mean? Like, actually being in there and actually doing it, you know. For me, it's like, even like general advice for like kind of how to get started, it's like, if you know some media buyers, it's like, just ask them to like spend some time with them, you know what I mean? Like, like, if you're making like optimizations in your account or you're launching things in your account, it's like, is it cool if we kind of get on and you kind of like show me some stuff? You don't even really have to talk to me about it, just like to witness it firsthand. Or if you're trying to figure out some problems, like, can I help you try and figure them out? You know what I mean? Like, and just not being afraid to dive in, because I think with like a lot of skills and a lot of different things in their own domain, it's like there's like an element of fear, because like you have all these like preconceived notions on like what they are and what's involved with them and whatnot. But you know what I mean? It's like just trying to put all that aside and just like dive in and see exactly what's going on. You know what I mean? Because that's what it was for me. Like, and my start was like being at an agency and like seeing all these, being around media buyers all the time, and then sitting on coaching calls and watching, like, for lack of better terms, like a legendary media buyer like sit there and diagnose problems, and like me getting to watch that for an hour a day, 4 or 5 times a week, and it begins to accumulate. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, I'm like diving in myself, and I'm poking around, and I'm starting to analyze stuff, and like understanding the metrics and the numbers more. You know what I mean? But I think it can start by just being slightly closer to it. I would say that's more valuable, maybe even than watching courses or anything like that. Just if you know some media buyers, you get in touch with them, offer to help them out. You know what I mean? It's like, if he's a freelancer or whatnot, like, look, dude, I'll write some ads for you. You know, if you could just kind of show me a bit in your ad accounts and like what you're doing and kind of how you think about certain things. I'm just trying to like learn media buying a bit more. You know what I mean? Even like starting there is probably a good place for it. You know, just getting slightly closer to it. It's the way it happened for me. And pretty much with like all the stuff like I figured out and learned. You know what I mean? Just getting slightly closer to somebody that's doing it, and then just getting exposed to it more and more. I think it's as easy as that. I think the thing with like a lot of copywriters, like they see themselves as like creative people. You know what I mean? So like, and then they see the numbers and data, and they're like, no. I'm not going anywhere near that. Like, I'm not looking at numbers. I'm not looking at data. It's like, that's okay, but there's going to be somebody like me and more people like me that are willing to do it, and you're going to get one step ahead. You know what I mean? It's like, that's the reality of it. And that's the same thing with like the hard work and the 100%. It's like, I don't really want to do that. It's like, that's cool, but like there's other people out there that will do it. So like, you got to accept that they're maybe going to go further faster if they're willing to stick their teeth in and do more than what you are. You know what I mean? So there's an element that is like, you can shy away from it if you want, but there's going to be other people out there doing it. So like, gotta learn to compete. Like,
I mean, I never went into the media buying side, but I was dealing with problems from the email side of things, like the tech aspects of email. My open rates on some of my emails weren't performing, you know, like went digging in, became I can run the email marketing platform completely without needing to give it to somebody else. It's like, I can do the whole process now. So like, you know, you might start as a copywriter, but in my world, it's like, I knew I wanted to double down on email. Like I told you, right? I wrote that sales page, and that was a very pivotal moment, actually. That business owner, he's a really good copywriter. He's one of the best copywriters in the world from his time. He told me, you know, like, with training, I can get you good at sales pages. Without training, you can be like one of the best in the world at email. It's just your thing. Like, you're naturally just really good at this. Like, this is your thing, you know? So like, you can learn sales pages, but you should be an email marketer. You should be like, make it your goal to be the #1 email marketer, email copywriter in the world. And I really took that advice to heart back then. And I was like, everything email is me. I'm going to refer everything else. I made that decision. Every other type of copy, like, okay, I can write Facebook ads, I can write all other copy, but like, when I'm serving my clients, I just want to be in there with the email side of things, you know? And that means really helped me. Maybe I've said no to many deals, and I missed out a lot of learning on like the media buying side and funnel side. But with email stuff, like I really feel confident with how to fix certain things, and it's out of the scope of copywriting. So like you said, right, it's like getting curious and realizing like other people are going to be learning those things. If you're just going to stick with the copy, go for it. But you know, there's somebody else that's going to show up that's going to know all those other things. And that's the case with me. Like when I came in with this one client that I mentioned, that I said no to the autoresponders and I said no to the daily emails for 6 months. The reason that they actually work with me and not some other copywriter, because they had a copywriter previously, that copywriter had driven their email into the ground in terms of like open rates, and the tech side of things was just a mess. And they came to me and they're like, we need somebody to run the email list. We don't need somebody to write email copy. I can write the email copy. I need you to come in and actually run email for us. And I'd been preparing for like a very long time. So it was a very, very easy deal because I could do that. And actually, over the years, I think I could probably count like a dozen clients that have come to me and they like previously had an email copywriter. I would say the copy was pretty good. They lost their clients because they were just too focused on, I just want to do the copy. I want to like work in this little silo. I want to make my 10K or make more and like not do anything else. And it's like, yeah, you're living in delusion if you think that you're going to be able to like grow with what the market needs, because copy today is like much more than just writing the copy. So that's kind of what you're doing now today, right? Like you've taken all those skills and you've converted them into being a fractional CMO, right?
Yeah. So we just started a small agency, fractional CMO firm. Me and Billy Porter just started our own thing up there a couple of months ago. Got 2 clients fired up for now, and same principle that I had back when I started. You know what I mean? We've put ourselves in a nice, comfortable position to pick and choose who we work with, and we've got 2 really good clients that we're really excited for. One of them's starting pretty, much bigger, than like $500,000 a month, and then the other one's like also a very successful entrepreneur and is probably one of the only guys that's actually sold a coaching business. But we started working with him, but he's launched his own book, the book funnel. So we're getting that fired up and stuff, and we've got sole control over that, which is pretty cool. So that's what we're working on now. And yeah, Billy as well is kind of like a bit like me. You know what I mean? He's like phenomenal media buyer on YouTube and Facebook. But like, if I say to him like, Billy, can you write those YouTube ad scripts? Like, he's gonna do it. Like, and he's probably gonna do it better than most copywriters. You know what I mean? So it's like we've got that like multi-versatile skill set, that kind of like overlaps, where he's slightly stronger at some things and I'm slightly stronger at others, but like we can both do so much, together. So just excited for that. And yeah, it's been a weird transition stepping out of working at an agency for so long, where there's just noise constantly and now there's just quiet constantly, you know what I mean? So yeah, excited for the future and excited to see what we do and where we go.
Yeah, and if a business owner wants to reach out and get your help, where can they get in touch with you?
At the minute, probably Facebook's your only hope. So try there. I'm not very good at having an online presence, as you probably know. But yeah, just add me as a friend on Facebook. Shouldn't be too difficult to find. And yeah, we can go from there.
Sounds amazing. Lee, it was an absolute pleasure chatting with you. I think I learned a lot, and I think a lot of people will really appreciate all the perspective on what it actually takes to make it work and to get really good at what you do. Thanks for your time.
For sure, it was amazing. Had a blast.